all you need to know about the Small Business Administration. So the way we're going to start, I'm facilitating today. My name is Soraya Sinozier. I'm an AHP board member. And I, along with other colleagues.
Can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Can all of you hear me?
I can hear you, fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So for a professional mentorship workshop series, we've had two sessions so far. One on master class of owning your own business that was chaired by Solange Vivens, and last week we had another interesting session on making your side gig work for you. We had 3 guest speakers, France de Renocourt, Fabiola Dumas, and Danette Roy. And today we're very happy to have Nirav from the SBA with us today. Nirav, please go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to read these important disclosures, but here we go. Hello, welcome everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Nirav Nick. I also go by Nick Rajpara. I'm with the Small Business Administration. Up here is my bio. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I'm just going to summarize it. All this to say that I work at the SBA district office in Washington, D.C., and I focus on a couple things, or specialize in a couple things, such as the HubZone site visits for our office, and I'm a program manager for the Emerging Leaders CEO Academy. If you don't know what those things are, don't worry. But the main thing that I do, or I enjoy doing the most, is explaining the programs and services of the Small Business Administration. No matter who I talk to, people think they know the SBA, but they really don't understand all the programs and services. And that's an issue because they could be missing out. We deal with organizations, they might know one side of the SBA, such as lending, but they might not know too much about the other side, such as government contracting. So the purpose of this presentation is to kind of give you an overview. Sorry, am I going to be moving the slides, or are you going to be moving the slides here? I could take over. If you need me to.
You can move your slides as soon as you share your screen.
Okay. All right. So anyway, as I mentioned, I am in the process of a screen share right now. All right. Let's see here. So other participant is sharing. Apparently I cannot share my screen right now.
Go ahead, you can do it now.
Okay. All right. Let me know if everyone could see my screen.
We can.
Okay, great. And let me just get to this view right here. Okay, so this is an overview of the SBA programs and services. It's really designed to make you aware of everything that the SBA does that could help you along your business journey. All right, and there are things that you may or may not be aware of. So I want to start with just kind of, this nice video. I'm not sure if we could play this, but if not, it's not the end of the world. All right. Let's see. All right. Oh, well, that video does not work all the time, especially when you're doing the screen share. But all this to say, the SBA is your dedicated federal governmental agency, which is really there to help you along your business journey, whether you're starting your business, growing your business, or expanding your business, or recovering. What the SBA really does is, if you look at these, the slogan of the SBA and the programs and services, where it is, what it has to offer along your business journey, it really corresponds well with the business life cycle. I'm not going to go too deep here, If this is not a business marketing class, if it was, you would spend maybe a semester or half a semester on the business life cycle. But the business life cycle, this is a typical life cycle of a business. You have sales on your vertical axis and you have time in business on the horizontal axis. As you're starting out, your sales are slow. You may be actually putting money into your business to start up. You may have no sales. You may have be profit negative. But there will become a point in time where your business will start growing, right? And sales will start accelerating. And then at a certain point in time, your sales would, not accelerate as fast. And then you enter your maturity cycle. And if you're not careful, your business would go into decline. So if you look at our SBA programs and services, we have programs and services, really, they're designed to help you along wherever you are on the business life cycle. And another way to kind of think of this is the SBA also has specific programs and services around these special topical areas. The SBA has, Small Business Administration has a 3 C's and a D mission. And you see that right up here. The 3 C's of the SBA are capital access, very popular part of the SBA. This is debt, equity, grant financing and bonding guarantees, contracting opportunities with the federal government. That's another part of the SBA mission. Also very popular here in the Washington, D.C. metro area. I know Gilles mentioned that this organization's headquartered in the Washington metro area. So this is a very popular business topic in this particular area, in the DC metro area. Counseling and training at no cost or low cost. One of the lesser known aspects of the Small Business Administration. And the disaster recovery assistance. This was a very niche part of the SBA, very small part. The pandemic has flipped this around. The SBA has been the primary agency that's led the economic response to the pandemic, particularly because so much of the economic disaster that resulted from the pandemic was felt by small businesses. So a lot of the programs and services that Congress created through the various economic aid legislations or the pandemic aid legislations has been led through the SBA for disaster recovery assistance. So a lot of businesses that are out there in the country that were in existence, they had no interaction with SBA. Now, virtually all the businesses that have in existence are, had some interaction with the SBA and some sort of contact based on the disaster recovery assistance as a result of the pandemic. Okay, so capital access. This is funding for your business, very popular. Particularly before the pandemic, this is what folks, lay people knew the most about of the SBA, the capital access programs, particularly around, these are the various capital access programs. Particular loan programs are very popular right here. If you see the very first program, but there are other capital access programs besides loans. There's investment capital, of course, disaster assistance, I talked about that, surety bonds, I'll talk about that a little bit, and the grant programs of SBA. You could find information on all these programs at this URL that I pasted right here on the top of the screen, sba.gov/funding programs, everything you'd want to know. And you could click on these various tabs, these are clickable tabs, and you can do a deeper dive and learn more about all these. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through all this stuff. The first one is loans. Now, I did mention to you that the SBA has gained awareness and popularity, especially in the pandemic over the last couple of years, the last 2 years, since it's really led the economic response to the pandemic. The loans were before the economic response to the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, the most popular programs the SBA had, the most awareness that the SBA had, the lay people knew about the SBA, was around this loan program. So when I would travel the country back when we could travel, I would go to different places, meet people at the airports. People would ask me, what do I do? And I tell them I work for the SBA. And the first thing people would say is, okay, I need a loan. Well, SBA loans are there. Now, the dirty little secrets about SBA loans, the SBA does not make direct loans. It has not for the last 20 or 30 years. They stopped making direct loans to businesses in the 1990s. What the SBA does currently is guarantee loans. The only exception to this rule are the disaster assistance loan products. That's a direct loan from the SBA to the business that has been afflicted by a disaster. But in general, for business loans, the SBA does not make loans. It guarantees loans made by a lender, a bank, if you will. Think of the SBA as a cosigner to your loan, in certain cases. Now, if you're interested in this and getting a small business loan, you need to go to a SBA guaranteed lender or SBA or an SBA partner. I would recommend starting with your current bank where you have a relationship with your current lender. Ask them if they are an SBA partner or SBA approved lender. If they're not, it's okay. You could still find SBA approved lenders. The SBA has developed a very useful tool called Lender Match. I pasted the URL right here on the bottom of the screen, sba.gov/lender match. So if you're interested in SBA loan, you go to this website, you fill out a profile, a Lender Match profile, and you say what you're doing, what you need the loan for, a little bit about your business, your financials, and you submit that in the Lender Match tool. Within 48 hours, all the lenders that are interested in making loans to you would reach out to you. You would be matched with lenders that are interested in talking to you about making a loan to you, an SBA guaranteed loan. So it's a very useful tool. It saves you from knocking on or calling a lot of different banks and shopping around. The shopping is done for you with this Lender Match tool. Now, of course, I'm going to talk about, this is the basics of lending, the 3 C's. I'm sorry. The 3 C's is part of the SBA mission. My apologies, all these acronyms. If you look at Lending 101, for any folks that have worked with bankers, lenders, there's a 5C model that bankers use. And that 5C model that bankers use to determine your credit worthiness is your character. They look at your character, your things like your credit score, whether you have any outstanding judgments or liens against you. The cash flow of your business, very important. Lenders particularly spend a lot of time and energy and do a deep dive on the cash flow of your business or projected cash flows of your business. Collateral, anything that your business may have to securitize the loans. Many times, lenders also take something called a personal guarantee. So they also look at personal collateral, such as your assets in your bank account, your real estate assets, your primary home, where you reside, your house, any investment properties you may have. They look at ways to capitalize your loan, and also the other factor is economic conditions of the lending. Is it a tight credit cycle, is it a loose credit cycle? All of these go into factors of whether or not you get a business loan, whether or not it is SBA guaranteed or not. All right, so that's about loans. Now as I mentioned, that is typically what most people know about regarding the SBA, or what have most people known about regarding the SBA loan products. That's not the only capital access product, the SBA. There's also investment capital. Investment capital is different than loans. Investment capital is equity financing, while loans was debt financing. What is the big difference in debt finance and equity financing? Debt financing is an IOU to a business, to a lender. A lender would make you a loan with a stated interest rate and a promise to repay back by a certain date. And equity financing is very different. They don't make a loan to you, but they take a piece of your business, a share of your business. That's how equity, so that hence equity financing. So there's not a stated interest rate, there's not a promise to repay, but it's more along the lines of taking a percentage of your business. Depending on what type of business you are, equity financing might be more appropriate for you than debt financing, particularly if you're something like an early stage startup tech firm. If you're something like an early stage startup tech firm, you may not have a lot of collateral for a lender. You may not have a lot of proven cash flow. All you have is an idea, a big idea, an algorithm on how you're going to scale your business. So a lender might not be interested, but a financier or an equity financier might be. So the equity financing programs, the investment capital programs, are typically run through the small business investment companies, SBICs. These are private equity firms, venture capital firms. They have a relationship with SBA. They enter into an agreement with SBA. Upon ratifying the agreement, the SBA matches whatever they raise in the private market. So whatever these investors raise in the private market, the SBA would match it with taxpayers' dollars 2 to 1. So every $1 that these private investors raise in the private markets, the SBA would match it with $2. The SBA does not make the decisions on which businesses to invest in. They leave that up to the SBICs, who have the expertise to make the investment decisions. There are a lot of popular firms today that have utilized these programs. Think Apple as one of them, one of the biggest companies. I believe they benefited from the SBA program. So that is another avenue in which your business could consider if this is something that is appropriate for a business. In addition to just debt financing, you could take a look at equity financing through the SBIC program. This is more limited. There are not as many SBIC firms. There's a limited number of firms out there, but you could find them right here on this website. I posted the URL right here to make it easy. You just go to this website on top, the URL on top, sba.gov/investment capital. And you would come to this website. All you do is click on this tab and you would find the investors that are SBIC certified firms. So SBICs, they're certified by the SBA, you could find them right through that tab, if that is appropriate for your particular business. So those are the two primary forms of funding your business: is debt financing and equity financing. Grants. Grants, people think of grants as free money. I wouldn't say that's exactly the case. It's funding in exchange for performance. So there is money that is given to you. It is given to an entity in exchange for a performance of a certain task or a certain outcome. That's really what a grant is. So it's not just necessarily free money you could get and spend however you want. It's funding in exchange for a performance. Now, grants are very popular because it's not debt, it's not an IOU, and nobody's taking a percentage of your business, right? You get to keep that. Now, unfortunately, they're very limited. They're loved, but very limited right here. It's right here at the top of the slide. Grants are always loved. This is the first thing people usually ask me, hey, what grants are available? They're very limited. They are typically, SBA typically grants to nonprofit organizations that work with small business and entrepreneurs. They don't typically give grants directly to small businesses and entrepreneurs. They give grants to NGOs that work with small businesses, entrepreneurs, that help them out. So nonprofit organizations, maybe this organization, Association of Haitian Professionals, maybe they might be eligible for some future SBA grants, something to keep in mind. But they typically don't go to small businesses or entrepreneurs because of risk associated with them. Now, for folks that are interested in learning more about SBA grants, I put up all the grant programs right here on this slide. There were COVID-19 relief grants available. Now, a lot of these have stopped and are no longer in existence. They were available on the first year of the pandemic. They were extended in the second year of the pandemic, but currently the grant programs are not available. Now, there is talk in replenishing some of this and ensuing legislation. I could talk about that later if there's interest in there. But currently, the COVID-19 relief grants are no longer in existence. There are grant programs for exports, but again, they don't go directly to exporting businesses. They go to state extension programs. So they go to states, and states give that money to entities that help exporters. The few grant programs there are. Now, if you look at this next category, the small business grant programs, one of the few programs that's available directly to small business entrepreneurs is this one right here, research and development grants. This is typically for science and tech entrepreneurs, something that is being developed out of the lab. Now I'm going to touch on that more in the next slide. But the rest of the grants, again, they are to nonprofit organizations that are really there to help, small businesses. Now, the SBIR STTR program, which is on this next slide, it is not a grant directly from the SBA. It is SBA oversees this grant, but it is done through 11 specific agencies in the federal government. So the SBA gives agencies that do research parameters on how they could administer this grant, but it's up to that agency to give the entrepreneur, the small business, the researcher, typically that grant, right? And if you want to think about what types of grants, businesses or entrepreneurs or researchers typically are recipients for this particular grant, you have the topical areas right here on the right side of the slides. So think artificial intelligence, nanomaterials, clean energy, anything that's really specific, very science and tech oriented. You may be eligible for a grant. If you're interested in this SBIR STTR grant, which is a phased grant, you could go to sbir.gov and learn more about it. It's a three-part phase grant where the agency would give you money for developing a prototype, then they would give you more funding as it's developed further, and then more funding in the final stage. Again, go to the website if you're interested. Now, surety bonds. This is specialized insurance. Okay, this is particularly for construction and trades. Businesses are constructions and trades. If you're in the construction and trades business, the government or a big developer might ask your small business for a bond to ensure that you would that they would be made whole if you cannot complete the work. Because there's a risk in awarding a contract to a small business. There's always a risk. They're in business today, but may not be in business tomorrow. Where a surety bond ensures that if the small business cannot perform the work, if they stop being in business or they don't have the capacity, that an insurance company would make that contractor or the government agency whole, for the non-performance of the contract. The surety bonds, they're really guaranteed by an insurance company. Okay. Now, just similar to the SBA guarantees for loans, the insurance company underwrites the insurance policy with the small business, but the SBA guarantees the surety company that, hey, if this small business cannot, ceases to be in business or cannot, pay the insurance premium or cannot pay the deductible or on the insurance product, that the SBA would step in and would co-sign the insurance product. So very similar to the SBA loan products, the SBA guaranteed loans. This is SBA acts as a co-signer, indemnifies the insurance company. Okay, so next piece. So that was about capital programs, the SBA capital programs, and I given you the URL. The next piece is the next part of the SBA mission. Remember, the 3 C's. So the first was the capital access. The second is contracting and procurement with federal agencies. very, very popular right here in the DC metro area. A lot of wealth is created, particularly just selling through the government. The government is the biggest consumer buyer in the world. So there's a lot of interest to sell to the government. All right. So the SBA does provide assistance in selling to the government. They are the advocate for the small business and contracting for the government, but they also help prepare a small business and position a small business to get government contracts. If you're interested in this, please visit this URL right here, sba.gov/contracting. There's a wonderful contracting guide on how you could go about selling to the government, okay? Typically, this is not for startup businesses. There's always an interest where a business is starting up and say, oh, I want to have the government as my first customer. Does not happen because the government is very risk averse. They get negative headlines if they spend taxpayer money and it goes to a business and the business cannot perform on the contract. So it's immediately written up in the Washington Post or any other media source. So the government likes to avoid that. Typically, the government likes to see business history. They call it past performance of at least 2 or 3 years. All right, but if you're interested, you could read more about contract. There are contracting assistance programs that are available, particularly certifications that you could get. And I'm going to touch on those, specific certifications as a small business, particularly if you fit certain socio-demographic categories. You could be a certified small business and be awarded a set aside, which I'm going to touch on in the next slide. But there's also counseling and help resources through PTACs. They are not SBA, they're not part of the SBA, but they're part of the Department of Defense. But click on this tab here and you would get information on how you could get their counseling and assistance. These are counselors that are there to help you, position yourself for government contracts. Now, one of the things the SBA does is, for one thing, let me take a step back. The federal government has a set aside goal to award contracts, to set aside a certain amount of contracts for small businesses. So pardon me if I didn't make that clear. I'm going to repeat that. So the federal government has a goal of awarding 23% of their contracting dollars to small businesses. Okay. Now, considering this federal government spends over $500 billion a year, 23% is not a small number. All right. So they have that set aside goal, by statute, of awarding 23% of their contracting dollars to small businesses. All right. And, SBA holds all the government agencies, not various, but all the government agencies accountable by, procuring a scorecard, providing a scorecard at the end of the fiscal year. How did each agency do for its 23% set aside goal? Now, within the 23%, there's a specific breakdown on awarding contracts to certain socio-demographic, socio-economic certifications. The small disadvantaged business certification, it includes the 8A program. They are 5% of contract awards. There's a set aside goal for 5%. The woman-owned small business program, this is, there's a 5% goal there. The service disabled veteran-owned program, there's a 3% goal there. And HUBZone, which is a little different because it's not based on the socio-economics or the social demographics of the business owners, is more based on the geographic location of where the firm is based and where the employees reside. But for that certification, there's a 3% set aside. If you're interested in any of these certifications, please go to our website, read up on them. If you're not familiar, you could come back and ask me, but they provide the best information, right? So over here is an overview of the breakdown of how these contracts are awarded. And when the contract is set aside, by a contracting officer and agency, that means only businesses with these certifications could bid on that particular contract if it's set aside. All right, more on that later if there are questions. Okay, the last C. This is the most undiscovered and the best kept secret of the SBA, which is a counseling and training. You know, capital access, you know, of course, people are interested, businesses are interested, they know about, they may or know about it. Contracting, if you're in the DC area, you probably know about it. But the counseling and training is one of those things that most businesses are not aware of that the SBA does. This is the educational and support services that the SBA does to help you, the SBA provides, I should say, to help your business succeed. First is our online learning programs. The SBA has spent a lot of resources, your taxpayer dollars, on building wonderful online learning programs, which you could take advantage of the comfort of your home or your office. Please go to sba.gov/SBA Learning Platform. It is there and it has wonderful resources. This is what you see. It has a great learning center, which provides specialized courses. And then it has a program for women entrepreneurs, Ascent program for women entrepreneurs. The beauty is you don't have to be a woman to use this program. Anyone could learn about it. The Learning Center has these very specific topics. So wherever you are, whatever you would need to learn about your business, whether you're planning your business, you know, developing your plan, developing your statements, financial statements, whether you're launching a business, what you need to do. If you've already done this and you're managing your business, it has courses there to help you manage your business, of course, market and grow your business as well. So all this is available right at your fingertips. You could do this at your convenience. And there's this wonderful business guide that's on there as well. I put the URL right there, sba.gov/business guide. Again, you know, whether you're planning or launching or managing, just click on this tab, you know. So, you know, if you've already made your plan, you're ready to launch, okay, you go to this site and that's, you'll tell you, okay, have you registered with your state, local government? Have you done your filings with these appropriate agencies? It's just there to help you out, make sure you don't miss anything. And of course, if you're further along, you know, in your business cycle, you know, please check out these topics and courses that the SBA has. The Ascent program, this was developed by the previous administration in its efforts to help women entrepreneurship. It is a good program. It helps businesses through a journey platform. It takes you through a journey. It goes through various excursions. It's very interactive. I posted the website right here, ascent.sba.gov. Take a look at it. It's something that you may want to invest some time in to help you with your business. So those are online learning platforms that the SBA has. Now, it also has human counseling that you could take advantage of. SBA provides human counseling and mentoring by funding SBA resource partners, all right? So remember I told you earlier, SBA grant funding, these are the recipients of SBA grant funding. The SBA funds these various organizations to help you, counsel you with your business, provide mentorship. They provide their counseling and mentorship at no cost because it's already paid for by the SBA. The SBA pays for the resources, their salaries, what have you. And so you could walk in or dial in or Zoom in or whatever to take advantage of their expertise in these various. The beauty is you could use all these resource partners. And the first one is, again, we were talking about women's entrepreneurship, women's business centers. So, you know, they're, you know, associated for women entrepreneurs. They're in every state U.S. territory. You do not have to be a woman to use them. They do specialize their programs and services for women-owned businesses, but you do, you know, they're not going to discriminate you if you're not a woman. SCORE, it stands for the Service Corps of Retired Executives. These are retired business executives. They're very specialized, very knowledgeable. You could take advantage of them. And I'll show you how to do that and find all these folks. If you're a veteran-owned business, they have Veterans Business Outreach Centers. These are not as prevalent, They're more regional than in every state and territory. But the small business development centers, these are full-time counselors that are there to help you with your business. The difference between SBDCs and SCORE is small business development center counselors are full-time paid counselors. This is where I came from before I joined the SBA. I used to work for the DC Small Business Development Center. So up at Howard University, but these are in every state and US territory. And these are full-time counselors. I encourage you to try them all out and find the counselor that works best for you. How do you find these counselors, you may ask? You go to this website right here, sba.gov/local assistance. You type in your zip code and all the counseling options that are available to you based on distance are right there, would pop right up. You punch in your zip code and everyone that you could get help from. And it would, and then if you don't find a counselor that's the right fit for you, you could go to another resource partner counselor and look around. So there are these wonderful tools to help you wherever you are in your business cycle, human and online. Now there's some more specific learning tools. If you are a veteran-owned business and coming out of the military, you might take advantage of the Boots to Business program. You could learn more here. This is for transitioning veterans. They're transitioning from military services to just private or civilian life. And the Emerging Leaders Initiative, this is more of a CEO training academy. I mentioned in my bio, I'm actually the program manager for this in our office. This is if you're a more advanced business and you're really poised for growth. There's a 7-month training program, no cost to the CEO of the small business. The SBA pays for it, for the training, but you would be put into a cohort of your peers and you would go through a 7-month training on growing your business and coming up with a growth plan to grow your business. So this is, and again, we could talk more about this if there is some interest, but that's the learning and counseling, which was under as I would say, SBA's best kept secret. Let me put it that way. But people don't know. Disaster recovery assistance. People even knew less about this before the pandemic. This was very niche. Disaster recovery assistance, SBA. Typically, before the pandemic, this was for businesses that were afflicted by natural disasters. Think hurricane, think earthquake, think fire, tornado, all these things that you see that still happen. But SBA disaster assistance programs are typically for businesses that were subject to that type of natural disaster ruin, right? The pandemic is a little different than that, right? So the SBA has developed its own website for coronavirus assistance because, and a separate one for all other disasters, right? So if your business was afflicted with coronavirus and that's it, then of course you would go to this tab. Now, currently as it stands, all the SBA assistance programs for businesses that are seeking new pandemic aid, they have expired. So if you're applying for new pandemic aid, unfortunately, there's nothing available unless Congress reauthorizes new programs, which there is talk about doing, or reauthorizes current programs. But other disaster assistance, you could go right here. I've provided the website, the URLs for all these. And of course, there's a preparation for emergencies tab, which is always good to know for your business. And if you go here, there'll be a step-by-step guide on how to prepare your business for disasters before they occur. Now, I mentioned typically before the pandemic, a lot of natural disasters, they cause real estate damage to personal property, machinery, inventory. So that, most of the disaster loans before focus on these areas right here. The economic injury is the business being closed and losing cash flow. That's the economic injury disaster loan program. Very big program in the pandemic. It was very niche before the pandemic. Over, I would say, between this and the PPP program, there's over $1 trillion in aid that was given just in this program alone. Before that, it was a very small program. So this has become a really big part of the SBA, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Some of you may have experience in applying for this. And of course, SBA had modifications on this, and it specialized supplemental loans, the grant around economic injury disaster assistance, known as the advance. I'm not going to talk too much about that right now, but if there's interest in that, I could definitely discuss that in question and answer. So that became a big focus in SBA since the pandemic. It's become a big focus of my time since the pandemic as well. Again, if you're interested in any of these for COVID, some of you may have already applied for COVID assistance. Please visit the websites I provided. And there's a breakdown between COVID disaster loans and other loans, all other disaster loans. COVID, again, is for the pandemic only. The other ones are for loans that are natural disasters, that are not covered by insurance or FEMA funding. Okay, there's a nice business disaster recovery hub that I encourage you to take a look at as well, along with business resiliency and what have you. Coming to the end here, and I'll just tell a little bit of the scope of our office. We're the Washington, D.C. Metro Area Field Office. I'm an economic development specialist, so typically what I do in that role is work with NGOs and nonprofits, such as your wonderful host today. But we're not the only field office. The SBA, just like all other federal agencies, is broken down across the U.S. In 10 territories. We're in Territory Region 3, which covers the Mid-Atlantic region right here. And we're, of course, in the Washington, D.C. metro area. The business concerns that we typically deal with is the greater Washington metro area, which are these counties right here: Montgomery, Loudoun, Prince George's in Maryland, Loudoun, Fairfax, and Arlington, and Alexandria in Virginia, and of course the Washington D.C. And of course Washington D.C., the District of Columbia, which is where our office is located and where I reside. All right, and having said that, I would hand the floor back over to your host. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Nirav. We already have some questions. If others have questions, please raise your hand or put them in the chat. I'll start backwards. We have a question from France de Renocourt. With the equity funding option, does the SBA take a percentage of income for the life of the business or for a specified amount of time?
The SBA does not take anything for that. They do not take a position in your business. They do not take a percentage of your business. But the private investor who makes the ultimate investment decision would take a percentage of your business, most likely.
Thank you. A question from Danette Roy. If you're interested in creating a business proposal and/or a business plan, would the first start be reaching out to your local SBA?
Well, the first start would be going to the online resources I provided. There is in the business, the learning platform, they actually have a step-by-step business plan guide. If that's what you need to do, you could start there. There's no cost. Okay. Now, once you've started there, or once you've explored that, or maybe concurrently even, you could reach out to the SBA resource partners. That, well, you remember I said human counseling? That URL that I provided where it says local assistance, go there. The SBA provides grant funding to those folks to help you with your business plan.
Thank you, Nirav. Another question from Gilles. Training, counseling, and educational services from SBA resource partners, are they free of charge? Are they open to small business regardless of demographic status?
They are free of charge, mostly. Now there's few niche cases where they may have a charge. You may have a charge. Mostly the counseling is free. So if there's anyone charging for counseling that's a resource partner, let me know. They're not supposed to be doing that. The counseling is no cost. The training is no cost or low cost. The only time you may be asked to provide a cost for training is if the resource partner that's bringing you the training had to pay for the training themselves. Let's say it was a QuickBooks training and they had to buy the program. They're allowed to pass on the cost to you, but they're not allowed to make a profit or charge you a surcharge above costs. So it might be a nominal cost of maybe $10, $20, $25, but should not be something exorbitant. All right. So because again, we give these research partners grant funding so they could help you and not charge you.
Super, thank you. You mentioned that Apple benefited from SBIC funding. So does the SBA coverage assistance extend beyond small businesses?
Well, okay, I'm sorry, I should have clarified that. They benefited early in their journey.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I didn't want to confuse anyone there.
No problem. Does anybody have any other questions? Please raise your hand or put them in the chat. Don't be shy.
And folks, my apologies if I was stumbling around there a little bit. I was a little excited. I just redeveloped the slide deck and I was so excited to get to the program. So if I was stumbling around a little bit, pardon me. I just want to make sure that you are knowledgeable of all the various programs and services that SBA has to offer.
Not at all. We were very excited to have you as well. Anybody else have any questions? Raise your hand or put them in the chat. Going once.
I have a comment.
Please.
Go ahead.
So first, thank you, Nirav, for this wonderful session. Wanted to advise everyone, and Nirav, taking you on that offer previously. So if there's a need for a more, deep dive session on a specific topic here, because I know this was very wide and very thorough, we can always schedule one, and Nirav and SBA has extended that opportunity to us as well. This is the first of many sessions, we hope, in collaboration. I just wanted to add that to the audience. So if anybody's missing, don't think you're missing. We can always, if we have the proper audience interest, we can always schedule a specific topic discussion. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to come back. I, love this organization. I like the good work this organization does. I'll be happy to come back and be my pleasure to answer any questions I could provide information on.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask a question. You talked about funding for NGOs. What type of funding is it? Is it for 501(c)(3)s or? And yeah, just if you could give us a little more information about that.
Yes, those links I provided, give you more information, but it's typically for organizations that have nonprofit status, such as 501(c)(3), maybe not limited to that. You need to look at the particulars based on the grant. But typically, these are organizations that serve entrepreneurs, small businesses. I know this particular administration has launched a new grant funding program called Community Navigators, and these are basically this grant funding is designated to give organizations funding to create greater awareness about the SBA. It's typically given in regional clusters. So if, let's say, there's parts of the country or niche groups or certain groups which have not really been able to take advantage of the SBA programs, they could apply for this type of Community Navigators funding. But if you're interested in that, please do read up on that. The place to start with that is a website I provided, the URLs. The Community Navigator program, the other grant programs, and see if that's a fit for you. I know in the Washington, D.C. area, there were a lot of NGOs that our office actually works with that looked at the program but decided it was not for them because this was really based on regional specific. I know that the grant funding just closed. They're related, for this fiscal year, but it's something for maybe the next fiscal year, if you feel you qualify for, it's something to get prepared for.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions, but Kervin Marseillus has his hand raised. Please go ahead, Kervin.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kervin. I'm a photographer here in New York City. I was also invited here by Mrs. Stephanie Bourbon. Thank you also. My question for Mr. Nick was, when I am connected to the local assistance, will I also have access to professional market analysis analyst for when I'm doing the business plan, or is it something that I'm going to have to outsource myself?
Okay, thank you. Take a look at it. There are resources, market analysis resources that either the SBA provides on their learning platform or the resource partners have at their disposal, which they pay for. So, for example, marketing. Okay, so I could speak from personal experience on this. So before I started the SBA, I started with the SBA Resource Partner, the Small Business Development Center. This was, again, a nonprofit organization. In the case of Washington, D.C., it was housed at Howard University. They had a grant from the SBA to house us. And we had certain in-house market research tools that we paid for through our budget. I believe IBIS was something that we paid for, IBIS reports. If you were a client of the SBDC, you were able to utilize that market research platform at no cost. So that's another reason to reach out to the research partners and talk to them, say, hey, listen, I need help with marketing. So the counselor may have some knowledge, but if they, whether or not they have knowledge or not, they may have access to these research tools, may or may not have access to these research tools. Whether they what platforms they spend their money on is up to the discretion of that particular resource partner in that location, but it's definitely worth a try before you start spending money out of your own budget. It's worth a try to see if the resource partners could help you. So of course, you save your own business capital.
Thank you.
We have a question from Althea Gray McKenzie. For businesses that receive PPE funding, do you know if they need to reply when new funding is available?
Okay, so I believe this is PPP funding, Paycheck Protection Program funding is what the Ms. Althea is asking about. And pardon the siren if you hear siren in the back. But yeah, so the PPP funding. This is something that you need to work directly with the lender on. Remember, this is a forgivable loan. For those of you who may or may not know about PPP, it became very popular during the pandemic. It was a program created out of the CARES Act, which was a loan, a forgivable loan made by an SBA guaranteed lender to a small business. Okay, it was a direct loan from the lender to the small business. Now, the small business, there's a certain underwriting formula the SBA gave the lender on which the loan amount was based, and the business had to use the loan proceeds in a certain way. Now, if the business used the loan proceeds in a certain way, that loan would become forgivable. I'm not going to get too much into the details, but if you do have a PPP loan, the first part is to start with your lender in terms of forgiveness. Now, the SBA actually has a direct forgiveness portal, which many lenders have opted into, right? So let's say your lender is difficult or unresponsive or anything of that nature, go to sba.gov. I think it's PPP forgiveness, or do a web search for SBA PPP forgiveness or direct forgiveness. Be sure that you're going to the SBA site. I wonder if I could post this in the chat here. If not, I could provide a link.
You can post it in the chat if you wish.
Yeah, let me see if I could. But this particular site, I think I had it up. That, if you go to the SBA direct forgiveness website, you could apply for forgiveness directly from the SBA. Only catch is that your lender has to opt in to this particular. Trying to minimize my screen here. Maybe I'll stop my share. Your lender has to opt in to this, to this. And there are certain banks that have not opted in, like big banks that have not opted into the direct forgiveness portal. forgive me, I'm trying to get to my screen here. Okay, yeah, to find the portal for you, the direct forgiveness URL. But yeah, so work with your lender. If not, go to this, but go to the direct forgiveness portal. If there's still a problem, you get stuck, you could contact me. There's a way I could escalate some of these cases if your lender's being difficult or the portal is not for you.
Super. So there's two questions. I'm going to group them. One from Danette Roy. Is there a cap for grant funding for the grant funding for nonprofits, either per year or the life of the nonprofit? And then France de Renacour asked if there are minimum and maximum loan amounts.
Yeah, hold on one second. I'm going to get to that, if I may. Let me go back here to post this in the chat real quickly. Okay, do you see that in the chat, the URL?
We do. Althea, do you see it? Althea,
Okay.
do you see it? Okay. Yes, so the last two questions.
Yes, okay. Do you mind repeating those questions, please?
Okay. Is there a cap for grant funding for the grant funding for nonprofits, either per year or the life of the nonprofit? And then I think this is a general question for small businesses. Are there minimum and maximum loan amounts?
There's yes to both. There's a cap to the grant amount. What that cap is dependent on the type of grant. For community navigators is something, and I know for the state export extension program, it's something different. So again, you could find out what those caps are. As far as the life of the grant, that's also particular to the type of grant. As far as the caps on the business loans, yes, there is a minimum and maximum amount on each type, right? So the SBA guaranteed loans, oh my God, the 7A loan, there is a maximum, I believe, I don't want to misspeak here, but I believe it's 3 million or 5 million. I apologize. Please go to the website. But there is a minimum, there is a maximum loan amount. There's a minimum loan amount as well of like, which is a 7A loan. You could go, for the 7A loan. Now, for certain loans, which are smaller than that, there is a micro loan product that SBA has. Again, go to our website. There is a minimum on that of $500 and a maximum on that of $50,000. Again, those loans are through third parties as well, third-party lenders. But yes, there are minimums, maximums, and depending on where you are in your business cycle, the various types of loans would be more appropriate for you. So if you're just starting out and just need a small amount of capital, the micro loan would be, more appropriate for you. If you're already in business and looking to scale, maybe something like 7A. If you're doing a community development project with real estate involved, maybe 504. Again, all this is right there on the website. I provided to you, and you can get much better detail on those sites than I could provide in a few minutes here.
Thank you very much. Nirav, if you have any closing words, please go ahead.
No, the big closing words are, just be familiar with all the different programs and services that SBA has to offer. They're of no cost. In fact, you've already paid for them through your tax dollars, so might as well consider them before you, look at other paid resources. And of course, some of these resources are already paid for by your tax dollars, may be appropriate for you. Some of them may not be, and some of them may be later in your business journey. So, but the most important thing is to be aware and know where to utilize and what to utilize from the SBA in your business journey.
Thank you very much for participating today. It was very appreciated. I'd like to thank the participants for joining us on their lunch hour. We'll be following up with a survey, and this closes out our 3 series. Thank you very much, Nirav.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good day, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.